Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button, and I'm a granite sculptor. Welcome to video number 39 of the virtual stone carving apprenticeship. Today we're going to start laying out this cross, work on these panels, try to get this put together. In the last video, we've decided that we're going to use the full thickness of this 4-inch piece of stone for the base. We'll carve what looks like a plinth on the cross using that dimension, and it'll match up with the actual base we've got pretty well, and it'll also provide a little greater visual mass to the cross. It's important to have something at the bottom that looks like it's heavier or thicker, because that makes sense when it's at the bottom. If the cross went straight down, some people carve them like that or cut them like that, and they don't necessarily look as substantial. So I went through and leveled off the top in the last video. This one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out by laying out the center of the cross on this and transfer it to each side, the center line, and then from that center line we'll go out 3 inches, and 3 inches for the bar, for the shaft and for the bar, or crossbar. We'll transfer that all the way around, and then it's just going to be a matter of using our 90-degree pattern or model to start laying out where everything is after we've pushed this back, because in order to have a 3-inch thick cross and have a 4-inch thick base, I'm going to have to push it back 1/2 inch on each face and do a cross so that it matches. And I'll just lay it out. I'm going to use a regular graphite pencil, and I'm not going to put a lot of effort into it because the pencil will smudge and whatever, but we're going to cut that right off. So the first thing we'll do is lay out center line to get it centered on both sides, and then after that we'll lay out a 3-inch wide pattern on front and back, and make sure it's all square and everything agrees as it wraps around the end, and we'll just plow it right off. So I'll be back in a few minutes drawing lines. Y'all probably understand how to do that. We're going to square it off the joint, off this bottom right here. We're going to go square here and start laying it all out. Now while you're doing this, be careful. Go slow. Mark your measurements where you could easily reference them. One of the things that's typical, all the sides on this, all the edges have been hit with a grinder or whatever, and so they rounded off just a little bit so they won't chip, but you have to make sure that you carry your line over pretty accurately. So we'll transfer it. Okay, I've got this laid on here, and I did the straight 3 inches. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mark my bottom at 4 inches, just so I've got it, but I wanted to have the 3 inches marked as well, to make sure that it was straight. Where this detail goes in approximately 2 inches, I want to go up, and I'm just going to go up 2.5 inches. I want to check that and see how that looks, because from the center of this cross, it's about 6.5 inches, and these are just over 5 1/4, so this will be a little bit longer. But if I go up 2.5 inches, I could even go up higher. I can leave a solid inch and then have a little extra mass, just so that it looks good. Now, I don't know exactly how tall this bottom will be. I don't want to make it very big. I just want to make it a little bit bigger than these. So if these are 1 inch, this might just be 1 1/4. Then with the tip of a 1/2 inch that some of these have, that gets 2 inches. An inch, that's almost 2 inches. So if I'm up and I've got a little extra, I can always take it off. So, and we want this to look good, and it's something you'll find out is that when you match old work like this that is probably untrained work, because this cross looks a lot like chip carving, and so that chip carving would be somebody that may be a comfortable carver working with wood, but they weren't necessarily a stone person. So you want to try to work where they are and meet them so that you get the same aesthetic as what they produced. It's really hard to do child art after you've been trained, because you can't stop and relax and just do it that way. You overcompensate. So if you can work that out on something like this, you'll end up being in better shape. Now, these lines will smudge as I turn this stone. We're going to go work on turning it. I'm going to lay the other side out, and then I'll be back and we'll have it all put together. We'll cut from the top of where this extra is, we'll cut this up and make all this a 1/2 inch deep and flatten it all out. I'll be back in a few minutes. Now I have the cross laid out all the way around. And I drew it with the 4 on the top. It'll rub right off, no big deal. Then the bottom is marked cross so I can drill it, and I'll drill it before I get too far along. Let's lay it down. Now, I gotta remember, I'm gonna cut in here. I'm gonna go ahead and put lines in here, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch on these tops. So I've got something for reference. But that's what I'm going to cut straight in and make this really sharp. What I'll do after that, then I'll have to go ahead and put I've got my center lines, and I'll have to go through, and once these are smooth, I'll have to put my center line back on and rework it, because I got to have a 1 inch panel on the front of this, and then tip these, and then all this detail of the model is all cut in within this material here, because we're going to sink that in. We're going to create that, because that's 1.5 inches. That'll fit right there. So it's important to remember where you're at and keep track of it. All right, let's keep laying out. This is just about going slow and keeping it in order. This is more about keeping track of everything and paying attention. Okay. This is a 4-inch piece of stone, okay? When we order stone, it's typically nominal that it's going to be 4 inches. That means it's at least 4 inches thick. So we measure this, it's like almost 4 3/8. Well, that's good, I didn't get ripped off. But if I just cut back 1/2 inch from here and 1/2 inch from here, this isn't going to be 3 inches. So you have to measure, whether you do diagonals to find your center, or whether you measure in. You got to put your center on there. Then once you do that, then you measure out from the center in order to get the actual 3 inches that we want, because like I said before, we're in charge. Now if I measure that, that should be just barely over 2 inches, and it should be even from each side, which it is. So we'll mark that right there. Double check our measurements. Make sure we're where we need to be. And then we'll measure our 1.5 inches and our 1.5 inches in order to get our 3-inch diameter, or cross section, or thickness, or whatever you want to call it. We'll stripe this up. We'll do the same thing all the way around. Now, down on the bottom here, it's going to be a little trickier, because we can't do that, because we're going to leave a full thickness of approximately 4 inches. So I'll have to take a little bit off to get it to 4 inches. We'll make this really match up. So this isn't hard. This is just panel work. You got to measure, you got to do it right. Just be patient. All right, we're about ready to start carving. So what I'm going to do, went ahead and marked approximately where my ends are going to be. Put a stop cut right here, just above this, because remember where we're at now, when I lower this, the center 1 inch both ways, that's pretty much the finished job. So my my goal at this point, got a couple of them. I don't want to create any type of witness at the intersection of these two faces that'll show, especially in the light. I want to make sure it's a nice flat surface. What I'll do is I'll put a stop cut here and a stop cut here. And instead of trying to measure down exactly however many 16th to 32nd of an inch, I'll just work this down and try to make this flat from this line to this line and true it up. And so I'm going to try to leave this line here along the edge as well. I'll cut that, and then we'll waste the middle out. The middle's important. The edge is a good reference, but down here on the sides, we're going to lose a fair amount of that. So, got the Cuturis, this short stroke machine set up, and you know, with the marble, the dust isn't critical like it is with granite, but it makes a mess. So I'd rather have sucker turned on. Starting in just with some straight chisels. I got some straight ones, just carbide, and then I got a couple that I put some teeth on, and I'll just plow this all on. So sit back and see what happens. Now what I'll do is I'll keep working this down, and I'll go down a little bit, then I'll push it off, and I'll go down a little bit, push it off. Little pieces or little mistakes. Go for big. I can break this off really fast, use a point and just move stone, but it may blow out all over the place. I don't want that. I got to be in control. This has got to work. So pay attention, go slow, do it right. And if you start having a lot of drift, it's easy to take a smooth chisel, a straight edge, clean it up, and get control again before you end up with a divot or a dig, and then you get to hit it with a corner or one of your claws, and all of a sudden things go bad really fast. This is a good chance to practice your panel work or your vertical wall work. We don't have to make this perfect, but if we keep it pretty straight, it's a nice reference. We practice cutting it square. As I get down towards the bottom, I want to be careful and not get deep into this because you can injure the marble pretty easily. And you have to be careful and keep track of which tool is which, because when you're going and you're carving and you're maybe not looking up or going too fast, you'll grab a smooth chisel, but it'll be a claw, and you'll lay that on a smooth surface, and now all of a sudden you got to start all over again. So take your time, be careful. Got the center of the bar, still got a good crown to it, but instead of finishing this all the way down flat and then trying to cut this, I'm going to go ahead and mark these lines and work this out. Then I can finish it all together, so that what ends up happening if you finish one spot and then try to match everything else to it, a lot of times you'll end up with something that's not where you want it to be. So by having this crown here a little bit now, it's also going to be crowned here the same way. So what I'll do is I'll probably get my combination square, because this is a weird depth. Instead of trying to figure out what number it is on the ruler, I'll just get this when this is really close. I'll go ahead and get the combination square set up so I can just check my depth there. But you'll wipe these lines off carefully. If you're not paying attention, I may mark these with the chisel as well. But I'll go ahead and mark these all and do them with a straight, and then just plow them out like I'm doing regular. I did put a couple cleats on here beginning so they wouldn't move around. You're in control. This little spot right there, it's still high. It's not on the face where I need to be, but you got to be careful. So, blowouts like that's not a big deal. Blowout like that's an opportunity to learn how easy the stone breaks on corners and edges, which is why I didn't want to buy it, because all these corners are already produced. Because if they're sawed hard, if they push the saw when they're cutting it, it can make the stone very punky. I heat thermal it, and it can cause it to be very soft, and it'll fall apart. So I'd rather have all this where I can go slow and produce all my edges and corners on my own, and then all it goes back, squaring that block of granite. Alright, do a little bit more work on this and flip it over and do the other side. Now I've done a little bit more, I went ahead, set up my combination square to start setting up my depths. The other depths I can reach pretty easy. This one we've got to have something to measure with. So went ahead and cut this one, set my combination square, lowered it. It's almost there, it's not quite, just about perfect. Did this one, I got this one just using a straight chisel, just a smooth chisel, and narrow one and a wide one, and my little Cuturi, and a little 3/4, and small machine. I'll do this one next. We'll just keep going, and I'll just draw it right together in the center. Now, sometimes you just have to decide which one you're going to do. I could have turned this over and done this on the other side first before I started pushing this back. I feel comfortable working with it, so I'm just going to go ahead and get this side close to perfect. It won't be all the way, but it'll be very close. And I'll flip it over, and I'll go ahead and do this on the other side. Spent some more time and went ahead and pushed this back. Now what I've done, I just worked it in from each side, continued on what I showed you last time, and at the end of the day yesterday, worked on it this morning. Moved these lines up using straight chisel and a claw to rough stuff out. Measuring it with combination square. I don't know if you can see, but there's just barely daylight underneath here on all 4 quadrants. And so now I can go ahead and take this metal off. It'll be tall if I do it right here. And then when I true it, I'll probably use some abrasive. Well, I got a stone that's cut. It's nice and long, and I'll probably just do some long strokes. Go straight across and get this pulled down and get it flat, like super duper flat. And that'll look great. And then we've got to have a small area, this 1-inch section in the middle, very flat. Then we have to have a small area right about here that's very flat on both faces. The rest of this is all going to bevel off. By doing this, this is just like we do regular panel work, just like plumb blocks and squaring the block, we'll get the perimeter straightened out, we'll get the top put together, and then we'll pull the whole panel down as flat as we want it. With a cross, we want to get it really flat. So now it's time to do the middle. We're finishing it up with just a stone. This is just a piece of a grindstone. I just bought a cheap one and cut it off. Go both directions until that center's pulled down where you want it to be. And you get really good witness from all of your low spots, because the dust will accrue and it'll keep this swept out. Then when you get to the end, we do the same thing that we did when we were hand axing something, because we don't want to have a cross marked here. Okay? We do our diagonals, and we'll do our diagonals the other way. Then we can go up here and we can do the same diagonals. That'll get rid of any witness of consequence in the center, because everything will be on 45s. You can lightly go in and, circle or whatever if you want, but as long as you're careful with your 45s, that'll cross it right up. Now, if you want to polish it, you can polish it. That's not what this job requires, so that's not what's going to happen. But it gives me a nice stone to start with. Now I'm down where I can carve it. So we're going to flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. I don't need to show you, it's the same thing. I'm just going to do it, and when we come back, we'll have both sides done and we'll work on laying out the rest of it. These little things all matter. This is clawed, you know, with the teeth. This is smooth chisel. But look at the difference. See how skinny that one is? See how fat this one is? I do that on purpose because when you're working on a piece of marble, it's different than when you're working on stone. We call it granite stone because everything else is softer than granite. So granite's the stone and everything else is what it is. That's just how we refer to it. You'll develop a familiarity with your tools because they last a long time on marble. They don't go away and change like they do on granite. So you'll come to associate this smooth chisel with a fat shank while you're doing this project, especially if it was a lot bigger. This one will go by pretty quick. But you'll pick up a tool and you want to do some rough out work, and you'll remember that you've got a certain characteristic of one tool versus the other, and it'll help you from putting the wrong tool on the job, okay? Because it's not a big deal if you put the smooth chisel somewhere where you want to rough it out. If you already got a smooth surface and you're scraping it or axing it, cutting it straight, and you put a claw on it, you wish you hadn't. So just little things like that will add up. They'll save time on your day. That makes your money, okay? Back to work. I think that's it. Now it's time to start doing the fancy carving. It's also time to wrap up this video. We got a cross and a cross. Get that, you can see it. And panels are pretty good. The centers of the ends are pretty good. Probably what we're going to do is we're going to lay out the detail on the end, on each end of this cross, on the bars and on the top, and then we'll work it in slowly to cut everything out as we go, and get the ends defined really nice. Then we'll cut the rest of it away, and we'll have a cross. So this wraps up another video on the virtual stone carving apprenticeship. My name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor doing a marble cross. Thanks for coming in.